The winters here in New York are long and dark. I've lived here almost my entire life, so I'm pretty much used to it. But last winter felt like it would never end. I think it had something to do with being stuck inside with a very energetic and inquisitive 3-year-old girl and a new baby boy. Oh, and by the way, this happened just before the whole lockdown, right in early March of last year. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love being able to stay home with my babies, but I would definitely say cabin fever had set in pretty bad. It was a pretty nice day, for it being early March. The snow at this point was all melted, the sun shining, so I decided to take them for a nice walk right around the neighborhood. I told my daughter to go and find her boots while I was busy putting the baby in the stroller, tucking all the blankets in. My daughter loved walks because she really enjoyed seeing all the animals and dogs in the neighborhood. She didn't care. Big dogs or small dogs. She loved them all the same. I knew she would love to have one, so I figured we'd get one in the next few years. Anyway, it was a great day for being March in upstate New York. And I remember thinking, as we're walking on the sidewalk past our neighbor's house, that maybe I was finally getting the hang of parenting 2 children. It had been a big adjustment, and I knew my daughter needed much more attention than I felt like I had been able to give her at the time. But being happy at the moment, walking along the sidewalk, and just enjoying being a toddler. There were a lot of dogs walking that day, and she was having so much fun. Since we were all enjoying our walk, I thought it would be a great day to go on a longer walk. I mean, the weather was definitely permitting it. So, I decided to turn onto the paved trail on the edge of a wooded preserve, next to our neighborhood. Abby was busy singing Baby Shark, and being such a nice day, I didn't even mind. Then, all of a sudden, she stops and asked, "Is that a cute puppy?" I didn't see anybody on the trail, so I thought she was asking for a puppy, and told her we would probably see one soon. But she wouldn't budge, and kept staring into the woods. Louder, she said it again. "Cute puppy, Mommy, cute puppy." But she didn't sound happy. She was kind of scared. I kept telling her I didn't see a puppy, but I saw she was pointing into the woods. I saw it. It was not a cute puppy. I don't know what it was, but it appeared to be taller than a person. My first thought was I was looking at a bear, but it was standing like a person would, on 2 legs. Or at least that's what I thought, since it was kind of partially blocked by the foliage in the trees, even though in the winter, it's kind of non-existent. But there was enough branches and brush to kind of block any discernible shape. It started walking slowly toward us, and I held my finger to my lips, telling Abby to remain quiet. I'm surprised she listened. Now, my heart was pounding into my chest, and I was trying to plan our escape, when this animal walked into a clearing, and all of us saw it. It appeared to be a dog or wolf of some kind. At least, that's what the head was. But the body appeared to be this giant muscular person, covered in dark fur. I was questioning everything that I thought I knew. Was I looking at a werewolf? I just knew we had to get out of there, and quickly. Just then, out of nowhere, a deer comes running past us, and right past the beast, which immediately took off after the deer, heading away from us. Somebody might as well have ran by with a slab of steak on a stick. I grabbed my daughter's hand, told her to run. As we're running, we heard something like a scream, but it wasn't a human scream. At least, I don't think so. I don't know if it was the deer or this animal. My daughter asked what that was, and asked if it was a big doggy. I told her I didn't know, but everything would be fine. We just had to keep moving. And after that, the rest of the walk is kind of a blur. I barely remember getting us out of there. I tried so hard not to let Abby see how terrified and shaken I was after the encounter with what I later learned could only have been something called a dogman, which apparently there's quite a bit of them here in New York. I know nothing of these animals, and have only barely heard about them. I didn't even think they were a thing, but I guess apparently werewolves are suddenly now real? But when I asked these questions, I found out that these are not werewolves, but something else entirely. Some sort of two-legged walking dog, I guess. Anyway, this was almost a year ago now, and I'm fortunate that this experience didn't alter or disturb my daughter in any way that was permanent. But I'll tell you what though, it's a walk I will never forget. Thank you for hearing my story. In the fall of 1997, a girl had gone missing in my town. At the time, I was only 24, and my brother was a volunteer firefighter. He actually asked me to be part of one of the search parties the town had organized to get together and look for her. We spent days sweeping parks, abandoned lots, and the forests all around town. But as the days passed, the search parties began to narrow and get smaller. But I stayed with it, as did most of the people on the crew. We did secondary sweeps of the deeper forested areas, knowing that she would be harder to find the further out we went. With fewer of us out there, we broke off alone, on solo, but were usually still within yelling distance of one another. And we also had communication, aka walkie-talkies. One afternoon, about an hour or so before dusk, I spotted some weird marks on the ground. I was keeping an eye out for footprints, either child-sized ones or adult ones. That mean someone had brought her there. But these tracks were not shoe prints. They appeared to be barefoot. A huge footprint, with marks at the toes. Almost kind of like claw marks. But the shape was decidedly human, and there were only 2 prints, meaning it had to have been a person, or something else that walks upright. I mean, what else are we talking here? A gorilla? It couldn't have been an animal. So I called out to another crew member to take a look, and unfortunately, he was just as confused as I. Since we couldn't rule out that they were human, although they were weird, we did follow them. We followed them for what felt like miles, and it was beginning to get late and getting dark. But we did not want to lose the marks overnight, just in case it rained and they washed away or became indiscernible. We radioed for help, got one another person, an older guy. He seemed even less convinced about the footprints, but due to the nature of the missing case, agreed to follow them with us. As dusk came, the footprints got harder and harder to see, even with flashlights, and they were pretty high quality, mind you. We had to slow down and search carefully now. It was starting to seem less and less likely that someone had carried this girl far, but we were not ready to give up on the only lead we'd had so far. While we were stumbling around in the near dark, we started hearing sounds. Someone or something walking, stepping on twigs and dry leaves right around us. We called out, thinking that it might be another member of the search party. Nobody answered, so we swung our flashlights around, but still no one saw. The sounds continued, and I thought about the marks. Whoever left them might still be here with us, and it could be someone dangerous, considering the circumstances. The 3 of us stood back to back, looking into the forest. I had a small knife with me, and the flashlights were heavy duty, but weren't exactly any kind of weapon. Finally, we saw a shape approaching. It was just a tall shadow, walking towards us, slowly and awkwardly. We called out some more, asking him to identify himself, but he did not answer. As he got closer, I noticed that his shape was all wrong. He was wider than a human, the head being way too big, and he was slightly hunched over, his legs bent backwards, almost like a dog, although he appeared to be walking upright. We pointed all three of our flashlights at what we thought was a person, or maybe a misidentified animal. We could tell pretty quickly that this was not a man, at least any man that we had ever seen. That it almost had certainly made the tracks. Whatever this animal was, it had almost certainly made the tracks that we were currently following, and it appeared to be on 2 feet, bipedally, and was also vaguely human-shaped. But the rest of it appeared to be canid of some kind, especially in the chest and head. It appeared to be covered in long canid fur, a little more stringy than a wolf, but still very much like a long-haired dog. Its face was pointed, and ears very much sticking straight up. Its mouth was open, and we could visibly see saliva dripping from its overabundance of unnatural sharp teeth. It slowly stepped toward us, never taking its gaze off any of us. In fact, it was so intent, it stared straight into our eyes. The eyes were glowing faintly in the dark. We backed away as it advanced, moving back the way we came. It never changed its pace, neither did we. At least until this thing let out this monstrous howl, and then lunged. That's when we took off running. It took us a long time to get out to the woods. It was dark, we were panicked, so we managed to get lost. Occasionally, one of us would think that we saw this animal, and we'd start running again. It was chaos for that short time. We eventually made our way out, called the police. While we waited for them to arrive, we planned what we would tell them. All we could agree on was that it was some kind of half man or half dog or something. I don't know. One of us mentioned the idea of a werewolf, but it just seemed too ridiculous. And as far as mentioning it to the cops, wouldn't even waste our time. So we had ultimately just planned on saying that we had just followed these human footprints deep into the forest, and that we believed the person whoever took this little girl had made them. The police arrived and agreed to send a team in the following day, following our instructions to where we had lost the footprints. An entire days of search later, they returned, saying they did not find anything suspicious. They didn't say anything about the unknown animal we had witnessed the previous day, nearly trying to attack us. Turns out, 2 days later, the girl that had been missing was found, alive. She had somehow wandered off and got lost. It was a miracle that she was never eaten or attacked by this thing, especially when I think about what it is that we saw. It was so Blair Witch Project-esque. We made some general reports to animal control about maybe a wild dog in those woods, but as you can imagine, that request wasn't taken very seriously. But to this day, I can't explain what I saw in there. But I have never gone back in there. I mean, I'm not really a woodsy guy, so I would have no reason to. But just about under no circumstance will I ever go back in there.